What's up everybody, Noble Comics here with another round of the Tournament of Power. Today we have Piccolo from Dragon Ball Z versus Ego from Marvel Comics. Two extremely powerful fighters here, and we'll be looking at all their abilities, skills, feats, and ultimately who would win if they were to fight. First, the results of the last match, which was Thanos versus Superman. You all voted, and you voted for Superman. I think that's insane, but hey, this is democracy. You all got to vote. And be sure to vote for this fight on my YouTube page under posts. Vote who you think would win after watching the video, of course. And so let's get into the fight today. Piccolo versus Ego. So Ego versus Piccolo. This is an interesting fight because these are two very different opponents from Marvel and Dragon Ball Z respectively. They're both incredibly powerful, but in very different ways. And to explore that, I'm just going to jump right into it and start with Ego from Marvel Comics. So Ego is this character, as his name suggests. He is a living planet. He travels throughout the universe. He eats stars and planets and things like that in order to energize and sustain himself. And if left unchecked, he can just devour like entire galaxies very quickly. So it's unsurprising that he is deemed a pretty big threat. Along the way, he has made a few very notable enemies, including the likes of Thor, Silver Surfer, Thanos, and Galactus. He has fought against Galactus multiple times, usually a weakened or starved version, and he has been able to defeat him in combat. It's also been stated that he's beaten Odin, the Allfather, who is roughly on Galactus's level, a little bit lower, but the two are at least competitive against one another. And again, he has defeated other very powerful beings from the Marvel Comics, including Silver Surfer and Thor. So how does this actually work? How does a living planet actually fight? And it's a few different ways. First and foremost, he can use his actual body of his planet. For example, he was able to catch up to Silver Surfer, which is a feat in its own right. Silver Surfer is one of the fastest beings in Marvel Comics. He's able to catch up with him and slam into him just with his planet body, doing big damage to him. If you were to land on the surface of his planet, he can completely control the atmosphere and terraform it, and can even create beings on his own planet that he can use to fight, like he's done against Thor. He's done that against Thanos. And this includes some tentacles that he can sort of summon and use to grab and restrain people, which again, he has used to successfully restrain the likes of Thanos, which is no small feat. He also has extremely powerful psychic and psionic attacks, to the degree that he was able to wipe the floor with Thor multiple times, just immediately wiping him out with these psionic attacks. And if that all fails, he does still have good old energy blasts, right? He can shoot giant laser beams out of his face, which are devastating to say the least. Even being able to damage Null, the symbiote god, he really just kind of is on another level when it comes to damage output. Even again, the likes of Galactus saying that Ego could have killed him if he had wanted to. And to get a sort of more tangible feel for his power, there was a time where Ronan the Accuser was given the power of Ego, essentially. And in that form, he was easily wiping out the likes of Thor, Hercules, Namor, and more heroes, fighting like the entire Marvel cosmic scene all at once. Which makes sense because, again, his main rival is Galactus, one of the more powerful beings Marvel has to offer. So, big picture with Ego, giant planet, very powerful energy attacks, very durable, being able to take attacks from some of the more powerful beings that Marvel has. He's incredibly fast, he's incredibly strong. If you get too close for him, he can manipulate his own gravitational pull, he can use his tentacles to grab you, he can force you onto the surface of his planet, or then he can summon all these monsters to fight you, which were powerful enough to fight Thor. And at distance, he has very powerful blasts he can dish out, and very powerful psionic abilities as well. Not to mention that he's a little bit crazy and also very, very smart. And on the other end, we have Piccolo from Dragon Ball, the superpowered Namekian himself, who's a character that really needs no introduction. He's been one of the main crew of Dragon Ball for forever. He's been able to rival the likes of Goku and Vegeta for a very long time, and in Dragon Ball Super, his power still rivals them. Now, he does have a very powerful form, his most powerful form actually, called Orange Piccolo, and I will talk about that. But first, before we get to that, just Piccolo in general, we know he's very strong and fast. Again, on the same level roughly as Goku and Vegeta. During the Tournament of Power, he performed pretty well, and before that he was sparring with Gohan, and Gohan was then able to match, but not beat, Super Saiyan Blue Goku Kaioken. So we know that Piccolo is roughly on that level of power. And Super Saiyan Blue, sort of for comparison, again, whenever Goku was Super Saiyan 3, he was roughly Galaxy level. Super Saiyan God was magnitudes more powerful than that. And then Super Saiyan Blue, which is magnitudes more powerful than that. More powerful than a lazy Beerus, who at the time could tap his finger and split a planet in half. That's the level Piccolo is at during that Tournament of Power saga. He's incredibly fast. His power output is insane with his Special Beam Cannon signature move. His durability is very great, taking hits from some of the most powerful beings across the multiverse. And he does have some regenerative abilities. But where it gets really fun is whenever he goes into his Orange Piccolo form, which he achieved during the Dragon Ball superhero movie and subsequent manga adaptation. And this is where his inner potential is really unleashed, and he fights against Cell Max. Now, for reference, Cell Max was stated to be at his full power, more powerful than Broly. He was not at his full power during the movie. So we know that he's below Broly in terms of power, and he was still above Orange Piccolo in terms of power during that movie. Regardless, Piccolo still was able to fight against him very well and was said to be on par with Goku and Vegeta in their forms of Ultra Instinct and Ultra Ego, respectively. In this form, he is much more durable, much stronger, and he can grow and change his size, as we saw him do. And for reference, the Gammas that he fights in this movie, Piccolo makes the comment that they are on par with Goku and Vegeta. They are definitely more powerful than he was, and we can assume that he means sort of in their Super Saiyan Blue form. But whenever he goes Orange Piccolo, these Gammas who were previously trashing him now can't even touch him, and he essentially one-shots, giving an indication to the growth in his power level. I think in this form he is still below Ultra Instinct and Ultra Ego. As we know, he's below Beast Gohan, and Beast Gohan was fighting on par with Ultra Instinct Goku. But he is still incredibly powerful. So if these two were to fight out in outer space somewhere, how would that fight go? Well, let's assume that Ego senses a great source of energy. Maybe he wants a quick snack to power up. But the source of energy turns out to be Piccolo out in outer space. But Ego doesn't care. He wants to go ahead and consume him anyways. And so the conflict begins. And I think Piccolo, starting out in his ultimate form, which again is probably just below Super Saiyan Blue in terms of power, probably is not going to be able to do a ton against Ego, just because we've seen him tank hits from people like Galactus and stuff like that. I think if Piccolo attacks him on the surface of his planet, I think Ego has a bit of an advantage there, just because he has full control over his planetary surface and everything like that. I think Piccolo would want to sort of keep his distance and focus on energy attacks. That said, I think Ego does have enough energy firepower from his own right to counter Piccolo's energy attacks and do big damage to him. I think if Piccolo were to try to get enough distance, essentially trying to fly away, Ego could keep up with him and slam into him, doing more damage to him there. I'm not sure how like psychic or psionic attacks would work against Piccolo. I'm not sure if he has resistance to that or if he's weak to that, but given that Thor was wiped out by it, I'm sure it would be quite devastating as well. All this is to say, I think when it comes to strength, speed, potentially energy output, and durability, Ultimate Piccolo versus Ego, I think Ego has the advantage in pretty much all these categories. I also think Ego is probably more intelligent. And the main thing going for Piccolo and a lot of Dragon Ball characters, I think, is their martial arts abilities, but that doesn't really matter whenever you're fighting an entire planet. Your martial arts no longer really plays a role in that. However, if Piccolo were to power up to his Orange Piccolo form, I think things do swing more in his direction. For one thing, we know that his strength and durability skyrocket, getting way more powerful than they were before. I think putting him adequately in a Skyfather tier of power, which again is no stranger to the likes of Ego, who's fought against people like Odin and even defeated him before. But I do think it would mean that Piccolo is not going to get battered around in his Orange Piccolo form like he might have in his previous form. He can also grow, hopefully shrinking that size difference between the two a little bit at least, because Ego's not the size of a full planet. It's kind of like a moon, or maybe, around that size. And now, I think in this form, yeah, durability is probably closer to being equalized. Speed, I think Piccolo has a combat speed advantage. I think, like, if they're doing a foot race, or as close as you could get to a foot race, Ego probably wins. But I think durability is closer. I think power output now is definitely closer. I think that a full power special beam cannon from a giant orange Piccolo is probably going to do massive damage to Ego the Living Planet. I don't think it would necessarily wipe him out, like just one-shot him, just because of what we've seen him tank in the past, but he would definitely feel it. And probably a similar thing can be said for Ego's blasts against Orange Piccolo. But will that be enough for Orange Piccolo to actually get the victory? And I think if we're going just on feats alone, the answer is no. We've just seen a lot more from Ego over the years. Then we have Orange Piccolo, who is relatively new, hasn't had a ton to do in the manga yet, outside of Superhero. A lot of his power level and scaling is just kind of hearsay. Like, oh yeah, he's on par with Goku and Vegeta. Yeah, he's around this power level. This guy was around the power level of Broly, without a very clear level and clear feats showing the actual power of this character. And we don't quite know again how psionic or mental attacks would work against Piccolo, how that would all look. But at the back of my mind, it's saying, like, Piccolo can destroy a planet, right? The amount of power it would take for Orange Piccolo to destroy a planet is like lifting a pinky. And Ego's a planet, so surely that means he just gets shattered, right? Even though I know that's not the case. That's kind of how I feel. Which makes this sort of a hard decision to make. Because again, logically, I think if you're just looking at what's on the pages, what's on the screen, I think Ego does win. I think his power output is definitely enough to keep up with and to put down somebody like Piccolo. Because again, if you're putting down people like Odin, that's comparable. I think that's comparable. Speed and durability wise, again, taking hits from Galactus, taking hits from Thor, Odin, other characters like that, Thanos, that's also comparable. You get close to him and he's able to restrain Thanos and attack Thor using just creations on the surface of his planet. You know, that's dangerous. I don't think Piccolo succeeds in that angle. But I definitely will not rule out Piccolo's ability to win. Because he is incredibly fast, he is incredibly skilled, even though his skill, the advantage of that is diminished, and his power output is insane. Nobody's denying that. I just don't know if we've seen enough from Orange Piccolo that I can for sure say that he wins. I think given some more appearances, it'll be more definite that yeah, he'd win this fight. But until I see that, I gotta say, like, I think Ego might actually take this. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments, who do you think would win and why? And be sure to go vote in the communities tab on who you think would win so that you can advance who you want further in the bracket. With all that said, take care, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.